Hello, everybody. Welcome back to LGBTQ and A. And I am here with Quill. And we are going to talk about gender identity and all sorts of fun stuff, everything that's wrapped up in that. And as you can see, she got the memo. We're matching today. It's perfect. So, Quill, why don't you introduce yourself? Let us know things about you, and then we can get started.
Well, my name is Quill. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm a recent graduate of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies. I play roller derby. I enjoy tabletop role-playing games. I enjoy video games. I enjoy reading and puzzles. Kind of collect pins casually. Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. I'm Mike. My pronouns are he and him. I'm straight and I interview people, amongst other things. So do you want to maybe just describe how you got to your identity? What was the process like for you getting to that moment?
Yeah, definitely. So I've had a couple of comings out. And I think that an overarching moral to leave people with is that identity doesn't have to be stagnant.
Right.
Doesn't have to be finding the one singular true thing that you are and is your reality. It can be fluid and it can be something that happens over time. Right. So I came out as bisexual when I was 16 or 17 and hung out with bisexual cisgender women for a few years. And a couple years ago, I came to the realization that I don't really identify with womanhood or femininity particularly strongly. So I usually kind of settle myself under the title of queer because there are a collection of labels under queer that I feel could represent me. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be inaccurate to say I'm bisexual, biromantic. It wouldn't be inaccurate to say I'm pansexual, panromantic, non-binary, trans, transmasculine, genderqueer, gender fluid, gender flux.
So many fun words.
There's lots of fun words. And I don't feel a really strong affinity with anyone in particular, but I am really comfortable sitting underneath the queer umbrella.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah. So that I've never gone through something like this. So and I understand that the process of getting from living in a heteronormative world to understanding that you're now whatever it may be that you are, right? You started off, you're like, maybe I'm bi, and then later you figured out, okay, I think I'm in this I'm going to be queer. That's what best identifies as me. Was that a struggle for you, or did you kind of know from the get-go, you're like, I'm not quite like that. I just need to find my thing.
I think that I would say that it was less of a struggle with external forces so much as a struggle with internalized transphobia and imposter syndrome.
Sure.
This would be the best way to describe it, because there are plenty of people out there in the world, out there on the big wide internet, that have very strict ideas about what a trans person is allowed to look like and allowed to feel.
Right.
And some of those things are things that I experience, and some of those things other trans people would experience differently.
Right.
And the queer people I share things in common with, and there are other queer people who have a totally different coming out story, and self-interpretation than I do.
Sure.
What kind of helped me fall into allowing myself to come out was realizing that it's not other people's job to regulate what I call myself, who I call myself, how I would like to present and be referred to.
Right.
It's something for me to find comfort in. Because that's really what it comes down to, is I don't feel a really strong necessity to perform for the sake of looking a certain way because I am trans, because I am queer, but because I find an affinity with queerness, it is a result rather than a cause.
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess the conclusion I've come several times talking to different people on this show is I've talked a lot about how gender is a spectrum, and how we don't really need to find one of those words that people use. You know, you've chosen queer, but like in reality, you're just being Quill, and that's your identity, right? And so, you know, if people are going to say, well, you're not acting this way, and you're like, well, it doesn't matter because I'm performing my gender, I'm not performing yours, you know. And like, so I feel like that realization is hard for people, especially when like at least recently the big push has been to like these groups need these things, and then people don't fit into those groups perfectly, and the people who are upset that they were out of the two groups originally are now like, well, you made these more groups, but now you're saying there's more, and that's just too much for me to handle. They like freak out, which is ridiculous because come on now.
Yeah, and I mean, some people do find a lot of comfort in finding very specific labels, and I think that's awesome for them, and I work very hard to know what is and is not appropriate to refer to my friends and acquaintances by.
Right.
But it all comes down to personal preference, and my personal preference is that I don't need to know exactly what micro label most appropriately describes me when I'm already comfortable being queer.
Right. Being Quill. You got your own gender identity now. We're gonna make it a
exactly.
thing. Yeah. Hashtag Quill. So
I can't take responsibility for this quote. Is somewhere in a tweet or a post, someone said there are as many genders as there are people in the world.
Yeah, because I would argue that
it's really a made up thing.
Yeah,
it's really important to some people, and
my cis male identity is so different from other cis male identities. Like, I could just think of a few people that are in the public eye that I'm like, yeah, no, that's not what I'm like, you know, and I perform my gender because that's what gender is. It's a performance. I do it differently than other people do, and it's like I feel like you have to be really consciously blinding yourself to not see that, you know, like it's there. It's if you look even like the littlest bit, you can find it. But some people, I guess, they're trying too hard not to, and that's probably part of the issue. So you said you studied gender studies and
the full title at
full title
U of M is Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies, but GWiz is what we call it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a great name for a major. I wish I majored in GWiz. I majored in lame things. But I myself did take one gender studies class at Lawrence. What kind of drew you to that as a major? I mean, did that have anything to do with your own identity, or was this just something that naturally fit with you?
I think I would say it was mostly the culture of the Jewish department at the U.
Sure.
Actually went into college as an engineering major. I declared electrical engineering, and after 2 years decided, actually, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do something fun. And do something where the other people in the major and the instructors are much more respectful.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a story for a different time.
Oh, I'm sure. Although we have time. If you want to talk about it, you can blow off steam. That's what this space is for.
But yeah, I think overall I think it was kind of the energy of the department is a lot more welcoming, and while the university as a whole has still got a lot of work to do with dismantling its association with and perpetuation of oppressive systems, I think that the Jewish department is working very hard at that in a way that I didn't see displayed in electrical engineering or some other departments. And I just kind of found much more affinity with the instructors and my peers in that department, and made a lot of friends there that I've kept in contact with.
Right. Well, and that's important when you go to school. You got to find something that you feel like you can actually move forward with. And I mean, electrical engineering is cool. Like, kudos to you for surviving 2 years of electrical engineering, because I know I couldn't do that. But like, in the end, if electrical engineering is not going to make you happy, you got to do what makes you happy. So, there's an inspiring message for you, kiddos. Do what makes you happy, regardless of what other people's parents might think of you. That's what I always think about it. Because like, I didn't really care because I knew what I was going to do. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this and whatever. But then like, I was like, okay, so, but now what are like the people down the street going to say when they're like, oh, hey, Mike's dad, what's Mike up to? Like, and then they'll like have one of those like hushed tones, like, oh, really, kind of thing. And I'm just like, whatever.
Oh yeah, I've definitely gotten very familiar with the, oh, congratulations, what did you major in? Gender, women, and sexuality studies. Oh, what does that do?
What does that do?
Like, trying to push down all the years of women's studies being the butt of college jokes in their head. I can see it happening behind their eyes.
Yeah, just oh man. So yeah. Well, okay, so I know where you're from and I know your family. And so I would assume that your family was very accepting of all this, knowing your parents. But I do know the city you grew up in, and I know that it's not perfect. Not even close. I mean, I've lived here now 10 years, and it's, it is what it is. How was that kind of coming out into a space that wouldn't necessarily, I mean, obviously there are people who are in your corner, but it wasn't like you were in San Francisco, right? Or, somewhere a little bit more accepting. How was that dealing with kind of maybe you didn't even actually experience it, but just the perception that that something could happen because of where you were living at the time?
Well, nowhere is a queer paradise.
Right.
You're never gonna find somewhere perfect. And I do have the privilege of being a white queer person, and so some spaces may be safer for me than for a queer person of color.
Right.
And I've only really, so I was born in Appleton and I lived here most of my life, but I've been going to school for about almost 4 years in Minneapolis, and I've only
Mhm.
recently just moved back to Appleton.
Right.
And I was only realistically speaking pre-COVID, I was only realistically out in Minneapolis. The few times that I would bump into people from Appleton over winter break or spring break,
Sure.
a little bit of a pronoun dance, I think, is the biggest thing, because not everyone has met someone that uses non-binary pronouns.
Right.
And it can take a little bit of practice. As well as someone going into the workforce, it's kind of a game of feeling out which spaces will be or have the potential to be more or less accepting.
Right.
And what that means for my place there. Because on the one hand, I don't want to work somewhere where I'm going to be disrespected or unsafe.
Right.
On the other hand, being out and being proud of myself and proud of my name and having a firm stance on my pronouns is something I would like to be able to do in the workplace.
Right.
So it's kind of I've been feeling it out. Like, some places I will apply under the name Quill. It's not yet my legal name.
Right.
And some places I'll apply under my legal name. If I get accepted, I will see from there where we go.
Yeah, broach the topic.
Yeah.
Later. Right.
I've got, to be honest, I've got two versions of my resume. One version of my resume goes into full detail about my position as the co-facilitator of the group Tranarchy at the university's Queer Student Cultural Center.
You have so many awesome names. I'm incredibly jealous of the ability for the people at your university to name things. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
So one resume says Tranarchy.
Right.
And the other resume says Queer Student Cultural Center.
Right. And that
it's kind of not allowing potentially, whether it's deliberate or internalized transphobia, to get in the way of my job prospects, because that's kind of the space I'm living in right now. And hopefully getting any of those positions and then changing from within is a possibility, and
right.
making it so that future applicants don't feel the need to
have a second resume.
Self.
Yeah.
But for now, it's a balancing game.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. I've talked to other people who've had similar experiences where it's, especially when it's something as important as your livelihood, and it stinks that you have to dance around those sort of things, but like, push comes to shove, the world is the world, and you've got to be able to do your thing, but it stinks having to hide your whole self to be able to do your thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, obviously, you know what I mean, because you're doing it, but like, yeah. Okay. Now I feel silly because whatever. It's been a long day. Yeah.
Been a long year so far.
I know, it's only been a couple weeks. We thought this year was going to be better, and then it didn't. Oh man.
Slightly off topic.
Off topic is my jam.
I have a slightly off topic question for you about Lawrence.
Please ask me all the questions.
Do you participate in the Lawrence trivia contest?
I have participated several times, not as fully as your family does, because I know how much you guys participate. My freshman year, the weekend of trivia, I was at a track meet. So I was gone for like the majority of it. So like I came back, I'm cold, I'm tired. I just ran like 2 miles, like really fast. So I've got my hood over, got my big bag full of stuff. And I walk past the lounge and there's just like 20 kids in there, all with their computers who clearly haven't slept. And I'm like, that's not happening this year. I was just like, nope, sorry, not going to happen. But then the next year I was an RA and I was partially in charge of getting my dorm's team together. And so that year I did participate quite a bit. I was the on-campus challenge person. So like whenever they had campus questions, like the campus challenges, I was the one who did most of those. So let's see. One time they asked for someone to come in full running attire, and I was like, well, that's obviously me. So they sent me, and we ended up playing QWOP in a computer lab, and I'm terrible at it. And so I was like, okay, like I'm glad I came. I rushed, the 2 blocks to the radio place to do that. And then on Saturday night, me and 3 other people made a waffle stand in an abandoned dorm room, a Waffle House. And I was the owner and proprietor.
Excellent.
Yes. And we lost only because the winner was just beyond. So one of the fraternities, they set up their Waffle House in the fraternity bathroom, and it was just a hot plate, and they made waffles on the hot plates. Like they made breakfast food on this hot plate in the bathroom of this fraternity bathroom, so you can imagine how clean it was. And the guy who was manning it, they only had one guy up there, and he was just completely naked, and they won because of that. That was the only reason they beat us. I was like, I can't compete with that. You know what? It's fine. I'm okay. So yeah, that's about the extent of my trivia participation. Like, I think I stayed up one night and tried to help find a Garuda answer, and failed, because you never find the answers. We made some people incredibly upset that night. So yeah, it was like, what's the name of the telescopes at the University of Alabama or something? And we called the dean of the department at 3 a.m. Like we found his home phone number and called him.
Oh wow.
Yeah. The trivia
Dedication.
team. Yeah, whom I'm friends with, a lot of them. They have the next like 3 days, they literally just have like, they rotate having people sitting at the actual phones for the university.
Yeah.
Fielding calls and apologizing for all the different stuff that we do over the weekend. So yeah, one of my friends had to sit there for like 6 hours and just answer angry phone calls.
Spectacular.
It's a fantastic tradition. It's something that I feel like not most universities would get behind, but I feel like Lawrence is just willing to like roll with that kind of thing. They're like, yeah, you want to do something nuts, like go for it, as long as you're willing to take the repercussions of your actions. And they're like, all right, well then we're gonna have people call these faculty members at the University of Alabama in the middle of the night.
Excellent.
Okay with that. Yeah, so it's a great school. It's fantastic. Yeah. Oh, trivia. Such a time. Yeah. And like the I guess the weirdest part of trivia is, that's also a weekend when we also get a lot of like visiting students. So like there are visiting students like walking around campus while this crazy stuff is happening. And like a lot of my friends would be like, I can't believe they're letting students, like prospective students come on this day, like this weekend. And I'm like, you know what? If they can't handle us doing this, then they shouldn't be here. because
Right.
yeah,
if I'm coming to visit a campus and I find out that they do a 50 hour trivia competition,
which involves craziness.
That's not a detractor.
Right, exactly. That's one of those things that's like,
encouragement.
please sign me up. Where do I put my deposit? Yeah, and like that's one of the things that I didn't even know about the university before I decided to come. Like I was just like, oh, this is something. Okay, cool. Or like one of the spring days where we have a lot of prospective students, members of the physics department and a few other departments would um, like deck the campus in Velociraptor Awareness Day propaganda. Like, you know, like in all the lunchrooms, we had like these little like triangular things with like announcements in them. All the announcements would be about like how to run away from velociraptors and how to stay safe. And like, you know, it's like always carry like 7 Slim Jims in your pocket so you can feed the velociraptors while you're walking through campus. And like, and you know, there's a bunch of high school kids there who are like either like, what is going on, or like, this is awesome. And so like we get we call it the Lawrence difference, but it's more of just like, you've tolerated our craziness enough that you're willing to like spend the next 4 years tolerating it some more. Like, congratulations.
Might as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've signed up. Congrats. You're part of our crazy thing now. Yeah. No, I know all you guys play pretty hardcore, right?
Yeah, it's. I mean, as with anything, it's gonna look a little different this year, but I'm still looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's interesting on kind of a split generational team.
Sure.
Some of us have a little bit more familiarity with the digital tools that are going to be used, and
Right.
some of the normal members of the team aren't quite as comfortable with that, and so participation is going to look a little bit different, but it's still trivia. I'm still looking
to
it. I'm still going to go until I can't stay awake, sleep, and go again until I can't stay awake.
Mm-hmm.
That's changing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, the Great Midwest Trivia Contest is hosted every year by Lawrence University. It starts on a Friday at 10:23 or something every year, and it goes for 50 hours, and it's crazy. You should do it. It's fun. They have off-campus teams. You can call in. It's fun time.
Registration is 8 p.m. this Friday, the 29th.
Oh, is it really? All
yeah,
right, well, I'm gonna make sure that I put the link in the description of this video. Excellent. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great tradition. It's something that, yeah. Oh, one more trivia story. So trivia my freshman year was the weekend of my midterm for freshman studies. And turns out one of the kids in my class ended up becoming the trivia master his senior year. So that first year, of course, he was awake the whole time, like the whole 50 hours playing and whatever. And so he shows up on Monday for his midterm, having not slept in 50 hours. and he showed up late. He showed up like 10 minutes late. He comes in with like the biggest cup of coffee I've ever seen. And he's like, all right, let's do this. And I'm like, oh my God. Apparently he passed because he graduated. So
freshman studies midterm challenge mode.
Oh God. Those, and like freshman studies tests aren't like multiple choice. It's like, here's an essay. Have fun, write the essay. You're like, oh. Or if you had my professor, here, write 3 essays. You have 70 minutes. Good luck. You're like, oh my. College is the worst sometimes.
If you're still in college, I believe in you. You can do this. Also, I'm so glad I'm not in college anymore.
Me too. Having, like, there are times where I'm like, I really miss being in like a community of my peers all the time. And then there are times where I'm like, I'm really glad I have my own place. And I don't have to be that close to other people that I don't like anymore. Especially as an RA. That was hard. It's a challenge.
I bet.
Oh God. Yeah. Kids. you become the first baseline for their problems, and you're like, I don't know if this is what I signed up for. Awesome. Well, I've ran through my little quick list of questions, so I'm out of things to ask you, but you're here, you've committed to being on this show. Is there anything that you specifically wanted to share with the world? Since I've given you this soapbox, you can say whatever you want, no filter. I won't bleep out what you say. You can say whatever you want. The floor is yours. What's your 2-minute spiel? It doesn't have to be 2 minutes. It could be however long you want it to be. No rules.
Step up onto my soapbox.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said earlier that like the one thing that I would like to imbue into this LGBTQ space is that no two queer people are going to have the exact same experience and the exact same preferences and beliefs and joys and struggles. And that's okay. And that's awesome. And that's beautiful. And that's part of queer being a wonderful umbrella, is it's allowed to be as specific or as vague or as nebulous as you need it to be for your personal world. So yeah, soapbox. What I learned in queer studies today is it means literally everything and also literally nothing.
Can I have my degree now? Oh, what a glorious time that would be. Oh, yeah. I'm just gonna roll back real quick. I did mention I did take one gender studies course, and I wanted to tell you about it because I figured you'd find it interesting. So at Lawrence, there is a gender studies department, and they have their courses and their major and all that. But then, so my sophomore or junior year, they decided that they wanted to have like a film studies major. Kind of weird for a small liberal arts college, but they're like, we're going all in on this. This is what we want to do. But they didn't really have like a film studies professor. They were just kind of like ad hocing it together as one does at a university. And so one of my history professors, because I was a history major, decided to make one of his courses a gender studies course, which it was fine. And it was entitled Masculinity in American Film. And you can imagine, I still have the movie list. I can send it to you if you want. And we started off with like John Wayne, and we went all the way up to, American Beauty, and like, I can't remember what the last film was right off the top of my head, but like we watched Die Hard, we watched all these movies where you're like, yeah, like classic male or whatever. And I think, in all honesty, I'm not really one of those. I'm not like a historian that's like, oh, social history is the best. Like that's my favorite. Like I'm still a white man. Like I love war history classes, and that's my jam. But like that was probably the most fun history class I've ever had, because it was like movies and like learning how American masculinity is so awful, and then like history. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I think it was the best part is maybe you'll get a kick out of this as well. The Lawrence History Department is oddly filled with football players and hockey players. That's just kind of it's that or government are like the two majors that summons all of them together. And so my class is like, out of the 40 kids in it, we've got like 20 football bros, and then like the entire women's studies department, and then like me in the middle of all that. And so class was just nuts, because you get enough people together who literally study gender studies, and then people who may not be 100% like they saw masculinity and were like, yes, finally a class for me, you know, like that kind of thing. And so like that conglomeration, like I almost wish you could have been in the room for some of the days we were talking, because it was just insane. And like I almost didn't want to talk because I was just like watching them all argue with each other. It was fantastic. It was a great class. But yeah, it was good. I can send you the list of movies because it's a pretty solid.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid list of movies.
Not for a class, but for personal enrichment. Kind of a funny story. So I was, at the time I was joking about it because like other people staying up until 3 a.m. I don't know, impulse buys, texting your ex, whatever happens at 3 a.m. Me at 3 a.m. signs up for a video lecture on non-toxic masculinity and forgets about it until I get the confirmation email from Zoom. But yeah, no, that sounds like a really interesting class, and I want to slip in just a gentle plug for I can't remember the name of the group, but the speaker was Richie Reseda. Did a series on like what non-toxic masculinity looks like and means, and like how we uncover and develop that. It's really cool, and there's pieces of it online. So
did he give like poignant examples of like people in media who like represent those things? Or is he more general?
It was less about specific examples of individuals and more about the moral of the story that he kind of imbued was non-toxic masculinity is authenticity.
Right.
And he talked about how non-toxic masculinity holds toxic masculinities
accountable,
and how that's where specifically cis male allies come in, is calling out toxic masculinity in themselves, in their friends, in their family, and like as they see it around them. He's a lot more researched on it, so definitely would say don't take me as a professional on it, but it was a great series.
So I can write you down as the knowledge keeper of all that then? Okay, all right. We're putting a lot of responsibility on your shoulders after tonight. I hope you're okay with that.
I'm gonna start getting calls from universities all over, and I'm just gonna leave them on red.
Do it.
Send them links to video series that other people have done on it.
You know what though? A lot of universities need that in their lives. That would be a great step in the right direction for maybe a lot of them, is to be left on red a few times and just see what happens.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Quill, for volunteering your time and being willing to share with, you know, the nebulous that is the internet. And we've got another LGBTQ&A coming up in a couple days. We'll be talking with someone else. And then after that, the schedule is open for a while. I got to find some more people to talk to. Yeah. But in the but until then, this is number 5 or 6. So you've got tons of things to watch, and there's, you can always rewatch them, because that's what the internet's for, rewatching things over and over again. You can ask my son that. That's what he does all the time. So yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see you later, internet. Bye.